Hello everyone, I'm back again with another video. So this video is requested from many of my viewers. This video is regarding JavaScript interview questions. It will contain top 150 questions and I'll be uploading these videos into parts. This video has 30 questions and I'll be providing the timestamps in the description as well. So if you want to jump to any question, you can refer the timestamps from there. Okay, now let's begin. So the first question is, what is the difference between Java and JavaScript? So it might be confusing to some people like who are very new to this technology, and they might think that JavaScript is extension from Java or it's related to something like that. So for them, this is the explanation. What is the difference between Java and JavaScript? Okay. So the first point is Java is a programming language. Okay. And the JavaScript is scripting language. What do you mean by scripting language? Scripting languages are those languages which do not need to be compiled to execute the code. Okay. You can directly execute the code. For Java, you need to compile the code, then it will be converted to bytecode, and then that bytecode will be executed and shows you the output of the program. Okay, so that is why Java is called programming language and JavaScript is called scripting language. Okay, and the second point is Java is object-oriented programming language. Okay, that is, you need to create a class, and then that class object will create to access its variables, functions, and other properties of that class. Okay, but in JavaScript, it is object-based scripting language. That is, it do not have class. Like everything in JavaScript is object. Like when you run the JavaScript code in the browser, it has a window object, and under window object there are many properties and objects under it. Okay. So you can see everything is object in JavaScript. You do not have to create a separate class to make object of it. Okay. But recently in ES6, that is ECMAScript version 6, that is, you can see it is the developed version of JavaScript. It has recently introduced classes also. Okay, so you can see it's mostly similar to like Java. It has classes and you can make objects from that class also. It is just to make writing the code more easier. Okay, so the next point is Java is a standalone language. So what do you mean by standalone language? It means that you do not need to combine Java code to any other languages or any other programming language and then run it. You just need to compile it and then execute it. But in case of JavaScript, it is not a standalone language and it needs to be linked in an HTML program for execution. Okay, so what happens is you need to link this JavaScript file in HTML file. Okay, then only you will be able to like run this JavaScript code. Okay, also you can run it through the node, like you can use node commands to run JavaScript. So you cannot run JavaScript alone. You need something or the other to run it. That is why it is called, it is not a standalone language. Okay, next point is Java is strongly typed. What do you mean by strongly typed? Type here is the data type. Like when you are declaring a variable, you specify the data type of the variable, right? Suppose you want to create a variable for storing integer values. Then what do you specify? You write something like int, then the variable name, and then you assign value to it, right? So you need to specify what kind of variable you want to store in that variable. But in JavaScript, it is loosely typed. What does it mean? It means that you do not require to decide the data type of the variable. Like it will decide on its own. Like when the code is executed, the interpreter will interpret if the variable stored in a certain variable is a string or number or boolean or any other type. Okay, so you do not have to decide it. Okay, that is why it is called loosely typed. Okay, user do not have to decide the data type. Next point is needs to be compiled before executing. I just now told this in the first point only, that it needs to be compiled and then it will be executed. Okay, but in case of JavaScript, you do not need to compile it. It can be directly executed once it is integrated with HTML program. Okay, next point is it does not require any web browser to run the Java program. Okay, but in case of JavaScript, it requires a web browser to run JavaScript program. So you can run Java program in command prompt or terminal or console or even in IDEs, but you cannot you do not need web browser to run it. Okay. But in case of JavaScript, you need a web browser to run the JavaScript program. Okay. But in some cases, you will see that some IDEs like Visual Studio Code, it allows you to run JavaScript program in its inbuilt terminal. Okay. But there also it has some limitations. Like some of the JavaScript commands will not run in the integrated terminal of the IDE. Okay, like you can go and check if you write alert. Like alert is a command in JavaScript, right? So if you write that alert function, it will throw error in the console. Okay, so that is why you need a web browser to run JavaScript program. Next point is program files are saved with .java extension, and for JavaScript it is saved with .js extension. Okay, this is pretty simple. You just need to save the file with these extensions. Okay, next is Java is stored in host machine as the bytecode. Okay, and in case of JavaScript, it is stored in host machine, that is the client machine, as the source text. That is, in case of Java, you do not have the source code, like the main file in which you wrote the program, you do not have that. Like it will be converted to bytecode when you compile that main file. Okay, so if host machine has bytecode, it will allow you to execute that program. Okay, but suppose there is two users, suppose user A and user B, and user A has developed the Java code and it he compiled the code and sent the bytecode file, like the file which has the bytecode, to user B. Then what it will happen is user B will be able to run the code, but he will not have the source code. Okay, only user A has the source code. But in case of JavaScript, the source code is only stored in the host machine, that is the client machine. Okay, like he or she will have the source code. Like you can go and check like how the coding is done in JavaScript. Okay, so this is what was the difference between the Java and JavaScript. Now let's move to next question. Okay, so the next question is, what are the data types supported by JavaScript? These are the very basic questions. I just wanted you to know these basic questions so that if the interviewer asks you, you will not be sitting idly and not answering the question. Okay, so these are the data types which are supported in JavaScript. The first one is undefined. So undefined is when like you have declared a variable but you have not assigned any value to it. So if you want to print that variable and see what is stored inside that, then it will show you it as undefined. Okay. So this data type you can say is an indication to the user that the variable is not assigned any value. Okay. And then is null. Null is nothing but it's a value assigned to a variable, but it signifies that the value assigned is nothing, like it does not have any value, but it is assigned, like it indicates absence of a value. Okay, so next one is the Boolean. Boolean is very simple. It basically returns true or false value. Next one is string. String is also very simple. If your name or any letter, these all are strings. Okay, and then symbol. So symbols are also an primitive data type in JavaScript. It allows you to create a unique variable, you can say, which helps in hiding some information, or you can say it helps in creating unique variables. Okay. Next one is a number. Number is also very simple. It's like 1, 2, 3. All these are numbers. Then next is the big int. Big int is nothing but a large number. Like a very long number will have the data type as big int. Then comes the object. Object is also another data type, like which contains other data types inside them. Like you can store multiple data types. Like you can store string, number, symbol, functions even, and another object also inside a single object. This object is a complex data type, you can say. So these were the data types which is supported in JavaScript. The next question is, how do you create an array in JavaScript? So here you can see there are two ways you can create an array. Okay, the first one is by using array literal, and the second one is using the new keyword. Okay, so the first syntax you can see, so you can declare the variable or the array name as a constant so that it will be preventing you to reassign a value to that array, but you can modify. Okay, So the first syntax is you can simply assign values in the same line in which you are declaring that array. Okay, so here you can see I have written the array name, and then in this box bracket I have assigned elements like array elements inside them. Okay, and in the second case you can see first I have declared the array and then I have assigned elements to it. Okay, this one will be like the array index will be 1. This is the typing mistake. So in the first case, you can see I'm accessing the 0th index of the array and then I'm assigning it element 1. Okay, and in the second case, this will be index 1. So in index 1, I'm assigning value like element 2 in the second index. Okay, so this way you can declare array, like you can create array, and in the second case, you can see you can use this new keyword to create an array. Okay, so here it is basically an array object. Okay, but in this case, it is not an array object. We always create object with new keyword, right? So that is why I'm calling this object. So this is the array name and I'm declaring it as constant so that we cannot reassign value to it, but we can modify. Okay, I'll tell you the difference between the reassigning and modifying it. Okay, but for now, let me explain you how to create the array. So here you can see I've used this new keyword and array. This array is a constructor in this JavaScript. Like this JavaScript has a window object. Inside that window object, there is a constructor named as array. Okay, so we are basically using that constructor to initialize the array. So here I'm passing element 1, element 2 and other elements we can pass to create and then initialize the array. Okay, so these are the two ways we can create array. Now the next question the interviewer can ask you is if there are two ways to create an array, then when to use which method? Okay, so both method has its own advantages. Like while creating arrays with new, it creates array like differently. Like it depends on the type of argument it is receiving. I'll show you what I mean by this. But like general way to declare array, I would say is this array literal method. That is because I'll show you the example, then you will understand. Let me open my VS Code. And suppose here I'm declaring an array named arr1. So I'll use array literal over here. I'll assign some values to it. I'll write 1, 2, 3 and 4 also. And then I'll declare another array using the new keyword. Okay. So I'll write const arr2 and I'll use new keyword and pass argument in this array constructor. I'll write 1, then 2 as a string, and then again suppose another string. Now if I console the length of these two arrays, you will see the difference. Now let me print the array length and show you. That is arr dot length. So I'll print the value in the console. So let me write console.log. And then inside of that array.length. Okay, and this will be array2. That's because this is the array2, and I'll do the same thing for array1 as well. So I'll simply copy this and change this to 1 and make this 2. Okay, now let me run this code and show you. Now here you can see in array1 it's showing 4. That is correct. In the second array also it is showing 3, it is also correct. But now see, if I clear these arguments and write only 5 and then run the code again, you will see the length of the array is 5 and not 1. It should be 1, right? Because there is only one argument I am passing. But in this new array, it does not work like that. Like if you pass a single number like this, it specifies the size of the array. Okay, so now if I print each index like array2, let me show you this one, 0 index and then second index, that is 1, then it's 2, then 3. You will see these all will be undefined. Okay, Let me run and show you. See, these are all undefined. So it basically allocated an array with size 5, and all these indices does not have any values inside it. Okay. So this is how the meaning changed once there is a difference in the argument. Okay, so it is up to you which method you want to use. Like it depends upon the code you are writing. Okay, so you'll have to choose any one of these methods. Okay, there are other advantages of this new array, this syntax also. That is, it will run much more faster in browser compared to this one. So it will give you like the output in less time compared to this first syntax. So these two have its own advantages. So you can decide and see what you want to use. Okay. Now let's move to the next question. Okay, so now the next question is, how do you create object in JavaScript? Okay, so there are many methods you can create an object, but I've listed few of them over here. You can see first one is by using the object literal, second is using the new keyword, and then third one is using this create method option. Then there are more. You can use this assign method also, and in ES6 also there it introduced classes. You can use classes also to define objects. Okay, so now let me take you through them one by one. The first one is the object literal. So this is the syntax you use while creating object. Like this is the basic syntax. So in this syntax, the first keyword is constant. That is, using this constant keyword, you can prevent the reassignment of the values in the object. Okay. Note here, like I'm always saying reassignment and not modifying. You can modify the properties inside this object. That is, you can modify the first name. Like you can write first name equals to Ram, Sham, or whatever it is. But you cannot assign a new property to it. Like you can see over here, two properties are first name and the last name, and it has value as Aditi, and the last name's value is Seal. Okay, so this is how a object is created. Next is by using the new keyword. So you can use new keyword in two ways. So first is by using built-in object constructor function, and the second one is by using user-defined constructor function. Okay, so this JavaScript has inbuilt object constructor that is named as object like this. Okay, so you can use this constructor to create object and assign values to it. So you can see the syntax over here. Const person equals to new object. It is written like this, and then values are assigned. So I'll use this person object, and then I'll assign values to these properties. Okay, and in the second example you can see over here, we had to define this function. Okay, so after defining this constructor function, you can create the object of this function, and then you can pass the values. Then it will go to this constructor and then initialize the values. Okay, so this is how the new keyword helps to create object. Okay, and the third one is by using object.create method. So when does this create method is used? It is used when we want to create object from other existing objects. Suppose there is an object A, okay, and you want to create another object in which you want the properties of the A. So what you will do is you will use this create method to get all the properties from A object. Here you can see the syntax. Suppose there is an object named company obj, and this object has the property of company and the value is ABC. So this is an existing object. Okay, I've written over here existing object. Now in the second line you see I have created the object, like the object I want to create, not the existing one. Okay, so what I did is I declared a variable named employee, and then I have used object.create method, and then inside that create method I have passed the existing object, and after passing the existing object I have passed my property, like the properties I want for my new object. Okay, so this is how this create method is used. And then next is by using object.assign method. So this method is used when we want properties from more than one object. So in the previous case you saw there is only one object, right? But suppose I want to get properties from like more than one object, like 2 to 3 objects combined properties I want all together. So that time we'll use assign method. Okay. So you can see the syntax over here. These are the two objects which already exist. One is company obj and the second one is car obj. Okay, and the properties here are company and the car. Okay, now in the next line I've created the new object here and passed the other two objects inside this. You can see here object.assign, and this inside this curly braces I can define my properties. And next is I passed company obj, that is the first object, and car obj is the second object. Okay, so if I like want to print this emp, like it will have these two properties inside them. Okay, and the last one is ES6 classes. It is similar to constructor functions, but in ES6 constructor functions are replaced by classes. Okay, it is similar to Java only. You can see over here the way it is defined, like the class, person, the syntax is similar to Java. Okay, we define classes like this in Java, right? And then we create the object of that class. So this is the same thing implemented in this ES6. So you do not have to create constructor functions to create the object. Like in this, you can see these were the constructor functions, right? So first I'll have to create these constructor functions, then I'll have to initialize the values and create objects, right? But in this, it's very much similar to Java syntax. Okay. So these are the methods you can create objects. Now let's move to next question. So the next question is difference between attributes and properties. It's very simple here. You can see the attributes provides details on an element like its ID, type, value, name, etc. And property is the value assigned to the attributes. You can see the example over here. Suppose this is an input tag. I hope you know some basic HTML. I'm not going to explain HTML tags. I've explained that in another video. I'll provide the link of that. You can go and watch that. Then you will understand what are tags, what are elements, and what are attributes. But here in this example, you can see this is the input tag. This is the opening tag and this is the closing tag, and this tag has some attributes. This ID is called attributes, this type is called attributes. Okay, and it has many other attributes, like you can write name, you can give value. There are many more attributes. You can give class, even you can give class to this input tag. Okay, so these all are attributes. But property is the value, like this login form. This is the value that is given to this attribute. So this is what it is written over here. It is the value assigned to the attributes. I hope you got this. Okay. The next question is list different ways an HTML element can be accessed in JavaScript. Okay, so what are HTML elements? It is similar to input tags, okay, but the difference between HTML elements and tags, I've explained that in another video, so you can go and watch that. So here you can see these are the 4 methods you can use to access an HTML element. Okay, the first one is get element by ID, second is get elements by class, third is get elements by tag name, and the fourth one is query selector. Okay, so the first method returns the element which has the given ID. Here you can see, suppose in the previous example, I have given this input tag an ID of login form, right? So if I write over here login form, then it will return this input tag, this input element in this function, right? It will return this input tag. In the second method, it is saying get elements by ID. So whichever elements will have the class name, like suppose I have 2 input tags and I have both the input tags class name same, then it will return all the input tags having the class name which is given inside these quotes. Okay. And the third one you can see, get elements by tag name. It is the same like tag name. What are tag names? These input, then a form, then a p tag, that is a paragraph tag. All these are tags. So if I specify here any tag name, so it will return the tags which has that specified name. Okay. And query selector is also same, like it helps to select CSS selectors. Okay. It will return the first element it finds which matches with the selector specified in this parenthesis. Okay. Now moving to next question. What is the difference between where and let keyword? Okay. So there are very much confusions between three types of keywords. The first one is where, that is var. Second is let, and the third one is const. So when to use what and what are its specifications, you should know, okay, so that you can easily solve the pseudocodes that is written in JavaScript, because these are the where the interviewer tricks you in the pseudocode. Okay. So now let's see what is the difference between where and let keyword. So where is a function scope and let is block scope. So what do you mean by function scope? Let me show you an example. Here you can see this a variable is declared with where keyword. Okay. So this a is global scope. That is, it is not declared inside any function. It will be accessed from anywhere. Okay, so this variable has global scope. But what if I do not declare this variable over here and I declare this variable inside this test function? Okay, and one more thing, you can see over here, I have reassigned the value over here and I have not declared it. I have declared it outside the function scope. So you can see when I am reassigning the value over here, and when I am printing the value, it is giving me 4. This is the output. So first time when I console log the first a value, it is giving me 2. But when I console log the second time, it is giving me 4. This is also acceptable. But you can see I have console log a value outside this function scope. And still it is giving me 4, but it should give me 2, right? But it does not happen like that, because the declaration of this variable is global and not inside this function. I have only reassigned the value inside this function. I have not declared it over here. So once I declare a variable inside this function, then this a function will have function scope over here. That is, when I finish this execution of this function, the a variable will be destroyed. Okay, but here I did not declare it, I reassigned it. So that is why the variable a is not destroyed. It is still there, but it is reassigned to 4. So that is why it is showing you or giving you the output as 4. Okay. Now in case of let keyword, you can see it is a block scope. So what it means is I have declared this a variable inside this function. So this is a block, right? So this a has lifetime till the execution of this function. Outside that, it is not available. So that is why when I try to console log a value, it is giving me error. You can see over here, this is the output. It first prints the value of a, that is this one, this console I have printed, which is inside this test function. So it gave this output as a equals 4. But when it tried to execute this line of code, it gave an error. It is saying reference error. A is not defined. Okay. Also, suppose I declared this let variable inside this test function and again inside another block. Then this let function will not be available to this test function as well. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let me open my VS Code and I'll clear this out. And here let me define a function, named it as test1, and I'll not pass any parameters, and I'll call this function here test1. Okay. And inside this function, I'm creating a block. This is the block. okay, and I'm declaring a let variable over here, and I'm assigning it some value to it, and then I'm printing the value of a inside the block, okay. It will give the first output, but when I try to print the value outside that block but inside the function, it will give me error. Okay, I'll show you. Let me hit save and then I'll run this. Here you can see it gave 10 as output, but it did not recognize this a variable, but it is inside this function only. But still it did not recognize because this let variable is declared inside this block of code. So this a has a lifetime of this block only. Like once this block is finished its execution, this a variable is destroyed. Okay, so this is what a block scope means. Now let's move to the next part. So now here you can see the var keyword can be redeclared. Okay, but let cannot be redeclared. Now here you can see I'm saying redeclared and not reassigned. Okay, so let me show you that as well. I have an example for that. This one. So here you can see first I have declared a with var keyword in the first line of code. Okay, and again I have declared it inside this function. Okay, so it is allowing me to declare the variable, the same variable second time. You can declare it as many times as you want. But in this case, in the case of let keyword, if I try to redeclare this variable with let keyword, it will give me error. You can see over here, it is saying syntax error, identifier A has already been declared. Okay, this is redeclaring, but I can reassign the value. If I remove this let keyword and only write a equals to 4, it will not give me error because it allows to reassign, but it does not allow you to redeclare. Okay, now let's see the next point. It says global variables are added to global object as properties, but in case of let keyword, it is not added to global object. So what is global object over here? In the starting of the video only, I told you that this JavaScript has a window object. Okay, so when I run this code in the browser, there is the window object which is helping to store the other objects. Like there are other objects under this window object. Okay, not only object, but there are many other properties like functions, variables, objects, and many other things. So the global object is referring to the window object itself. Okay, so what I mean is I can show you an example, then it will be better for you to understand. You can see over here, when I declare a variable with var keyword and console log it with window object, I did a mistake over here. That is, I should write over here windows.a, then it will be better for you to understand. But for now, let me just explain it and then I'll show you in the browser to make it more clear. Okay. Suppose I want to print this a variable's value and I write windows.a, this will give me an output of 2. That is because this variable which is declared with var keyword, that is var keyword, is stored inside the or under the window object. But when I declare a variable with let, it will not give me the value 2. That is because the value is not stored in the window object. Okay, let me show you in the browser, then it will be more clear to you. So let me open the browser and open the inspect part. So I'll just click the shortcut key, that is Ctrl Shift I. So now let me first clear this console, and now let me declare a variable. So let me clear this so that if there is any variable, it will clear it out. Okay. Now let me declare a variable with var keyword and assign it some value, suppose 15, and console it like console.log window.a and close this, and let me create another variable with let keyword, and let me assign it value as 20, and let me console that as well, console.log, and inside that I'll write window.b. okay, now when I hit enter, you can see over here the first value is printed, but the second value is not printed. Even though the variable is assigned a value, still it is not printed. That is because this window object does not have this value inside it. Okay, it only has the declaration and not the assignment. That is why it is showing undefined. Okay. If I show you the window object, you will see over there it does not have the value like the variable b inside it. Okay, if I click enter, this is the window object, and if I expand this, you can see over here it has a5. Okay, like a is 15. Okay, but it does not have b value. See, it does not have any b value over here. Okay, so this is what I was saying. So let me go back to my presentation. So here you can see global variables are added to the global object as properties. Okay, so these variables are added as properties in the global object, but let variables are not added. Okay, next point is variable declared with var keyword gets hoisted on top of the function. Variables with let keyword does not get hoisted. Okay, so what does hoisted means? Hoisted means that wherever you declare the variable with var keyword, it will go at the top of the scope. Okay, let me show you an example. Here, this is the variable hoisting. So here you can see this variable a is a global variable, and it is declared at the starting of the code. Okay, and not only declared, it is also assigned a value. If I want to try to print this value of a, it will give 10. But in this you can see the variable b is declared like after 2 to 3 lines of code assigned a value. So when I try to console this b value, it should give me error, right? Like I'm trying to print the value of b before the declaration, but it is giving me undefined. That is because wherever I declare this variable, the declaration always goes at the top of the scope. The scope here is a global scope. If I would have declared this b keyword, like the b variable, inside a function, like inside that function, suppose there are 2 to 3 lines of code, and after that 2 to 3 lines of code, I am trying to declare b variable, then the declaration would have gone to the starting of the function. Okay, but it is still showing undefined. That is because the declaration goes up, not the assignment. But when I try to console this b value after this line of code, you can see I am getting the value as 20. Okay, so let me show you another example in the VS Code that it will be clear to you. First, let me clear this. Now here I am declaring a variable that is the global scope. Okay, I am declaring a variable a and assigning it 10 value, and I am creating a function named as suppose func, and I'm not passing any parameters, and I'll call this function over here, and inside this function let me write suppose a equals 2, and then I am declaring this variable a, and then again I'm assigning it value as 4. Okay, now let me show you in after each line what it is storing in the variable a. Okay, so I'll write here a, and I'll simply copy this line and paste it over here and here as well. And now let me run this code. So now here you can see it first printed 2, and then again it printed 2 and then 4. So what is happening is even though I'm declaring this variable a after these two lines of code, it's hoisting this variable at the top of this function. Like it's not declaring here. It is basically declaring, I'll show you. It's basically declaring here. Okay. So that is why it is showing the variable's value as 2 in the first, and in second case also it is showing 2 because I did not change the variable's value, right? It is similar to as if there is no line of code over here. Like if I comment out this line, what will happen is I'm printing 2 times the value of a, and then I'm reassigning the value, and then I'm printing it. So wherever I'm declaring the variable, it always gets hoisted. So it can be hoisted inside a function, or it can be hoisted outside the function as well. Okay, it depends like where the variable is getting declared. So now let's move to the next part. Let me open my presentation. This is what is meant by variable hoisting. Now let me go back to the point. So variable declared with var keyword gets hoisted on top of function. Okay, function or scope you can say. But variables declared with let keyword does not get hoisted. Okay, and here is the syntax. I've already shown you the syntax multiple times. So it is written like this: first the keyword, then the variable name, and then this equal sign, and then the value you want to assign to it. And it is same for this let keyword also. You just need to use this let keyword. Okay. So the next question is difference between this double equals operator and the triple equal sign. Okay, so both are comparison operators. Okay, single equal means assignment, double equals and triple equals are comparison operators. So the double equal checks only value. Okay, like here in the syntax, if you see, this is the string and 2 is the number. So it only checks if those two sides are equal or not. Like it will check only the value. But if you use this triple equal sign, it will check the type as well. Okay, so it will check if this 2 is equal to this 2 value. Also it will check if this 2 value is a string and this 2 value is also a string or not. Okay. Now the next difference is it converts type of variable. That is, it will convert right side value to the type on the left side value. So in this example, you can see the left side data type is a string and the right side is a number. What it will do is it will convert this to, that is this number to string, and then it will compare. Okay, but it is not same in this triple equal sign. It will not convert the type. It will simply check the type. But in this double equals, it tries to convert the type. Here you can see these two values are equal, right? That is why it is printing the output as true. But in this you can see the values are equal but the types are different. That is why it is not executing this if block. It is executing this else block and it is printing false. It is as simple as that. Okay. Now moving to next question. What is the difference between let and const keyword? Okay. In the previous question, I told you about let and var keyword, and now it's asking the difference between let and const. Okay. So if you remember in the previous question, I told you that the variable declared with let keyword can't be redeclared, but it can be reassigned. Okay. So here you can see this let keyword allows you to reassign a value. But the const keyword is more strict. It cannot reassign the value as well. Okay, you can see here, it cannot reassign value but can be modified. So these are the few key points you need to remember. Like the first one is redeclaration, second is the reassignment, and the third is modify. Okay, these three words means different. So here you can see the const keyword cannot allow you to reassign, but it will allow you to modify. But the let keyword will allow you to reassign, but it will not allow you to redeclare. What redeclare means is if I write let a and then semicolon, this is the declaration. It's not assigning in any value, I'm just declaring it. And again, if I redeclare it like let a and semicolon, this means I'm redeclaring the same variable. So this is not allowed, but you can assign the value to it. Okay. And here you can see in this const example, this is an a variable and this is an array. Okay. So array has 3 elements, that is 1, 2 and 3. I can modify these variables. That is I can add 5 to this array. You can see a.push will add 5 at the end of this array. But I cannot reassign. Let me show you example, then I think you will better understand. So here you can see, let me clear this and let me write const array equals, suppose 1, 2, 3. These are the 3 values the arrays have. I can do arr dot push 4. Okay, so what it will do is it will add this 4 to the 4th index, like 0, 1, 2 and then 4th. So 4th index will have this 4 value. But I cannot write like this. Like if I want to reassign again, like if I write arr equals and inside this box bracket, let me give some other variables like other elements. Suppose let me pass a string or let me pass another number. And if I try to run this code, now here you will see this. This is causing an error. It is saying type error, that is assignment to constant variable. Okay, so I'm assigning again, like I've already assigned this array with some variables, right, with some values, right, but again I'm trying to reassign. So this is not allowed. So this will give me error and this will not give me error. Okay, no error. Okay, let me comment this line, then I'll show you. I'll just console log this arr. You can see the full array that way. And when I run this code, you can see 1, 2, 3 was my original array, and when I pushed this 4, it got added at the end. It did not give me any error and it allowed me to modify the array. Okay, so modification is allowed, but reassignment is not allowed. Okay, now let's move back to the presentation. So now the next point is let variable can be declared without initialization, but const variable cannot be declared without initialization. Okay, so it will give an error. So I can show you here. You can see if I declare a variable with let, suppose a, and I declare another variable with b and try to run this, you can see let keyword, like the variable declared with let, is showing no error. Okay, but this const variable is showing error. And what is the error? It is syntax error. It's saying missing initializer in const declaration. Okay, so you need to initialize this, like let me initialize with something, and now if I run, you can see there will be no error. This was the previous code, so ignore that. But you can see now this line of code does not give any error. So you need to initialize if you are using const keyword to declare a variable. Okay. Now going back to the PPT. The next is the example. This is the same example that I showed you. Like there will be no error if you do not initialize this b variable. It will print undefined. That is because like any variable or any variable in JavaScript, if you declare, it will automatically have undefined as value. Okay, like if you do not assign any value to the variable, it will have undefined as value. So that is why in case of constant variable, you need to initialize it. Like you can see over here, you cannot reassign a value. So what is happening is at the back end, this constant variable is like is assigning the undefined value. Okay, so that is why it is giving you initialization error. Like if you want to initialize again, it will not allow you to initialize it because it is already initialized as undefined, which is not allowed in const keyword. Okay, so that is why you always have to initialize like const variable with something, some value. Okay, and here you can see the select keyword is allowing me to reassign, but in const keyword it is not allowing me to reassign as well. Okay, that is why it is giving error. And in case of let keyword, it is not giving any output. First it is showing the value of a, that is 20, and then it is showing the value of b, that is undefined. Okay, that is because I did not assign any value to it. Okay, now let's move to next question. The next question is difference between undefined and null keyword. So the undefined is nothing but an indication. Okay, in the starting of the video only I told you, when a variable is not assigned any value, it is by default assigned undefined value. Okay, it is basically an indication that the variable has no value assigned. Okay, but in case of null, it is not like we did not assign any value, we assigned a value, but it indicates an absence of value. Okay, but both the variables are same, like the values are same, but the type is different. Okay, you can check the type over here, like with this example. If you try to give this condition in the if statement, like is null equal undefined, it will show you true. That is because the value is same. Okay, so this if statement will execute and not the else part. Okay, so that is why you can see the output over here, it's showing true. But when I use this triple equal sign, which also checks the type, that is the data type of null and the data type of undefined, it will return false because their type is not same. Okay, you can check the type of those two keyword also. Here you can see, like if you console the type of undefined and type of null, you can see the data type of undefined is undefined, but data type of null is an object. Okay, so that is why this if part of the block is not executed. That is why it shows the false as the output. Okay, now let's move to next question. The next question is difference between undeclared and undefined keywords. So these keywords are very similar, so you need to know the basic difference between these keywords. It might confuse you while you try to solve pseudocodes. Okay, an interviewer might play these tricks on you, so if you do not know the basic difference, it will be a problem for you. Okay, so now the difference between undeclared and undefined is undeclared means that the variable does not exist in the program. Okay, like when I am declaring a variable, like I am declaring var and a, it means I'm declaring variable. I'm not assigning any value. But what JavaScript is doing is it's assigning a value to it as undefined. Okay, you can see over here, variable exists in the program, but no value is assigned. So JavaScript is assigning a default value to it that is undefined. It's basically an indication. But undeclared is that the variable is not even declared, like it does not exist in the program. Okay, but when you run this code time, it will show error. So this is why the next point, that is runtime error occurs, but in case of undefined, no error occurs, undefined value is returned. Okay, like if you do not assign a value to a variable, it will not show you error, but if you do not declare a variable, then it will show you an error. Okay. Now the next question is difference between window and document object. Okay, so here you can see this window is a global object. Okay, like it has properties like variables, functions, history, location, and even other objects under it. Okay, but this document is not a global object. It comes under Windows object. Okay, it is also an object which comes under window object and can be considered as the property of the window. Okay, so this is the main difference between window and document object. Now going to the next question, what is arrow functions and why should we use it? Okay, so arrow function basically came in ES6, that is ECMAScript version 6. It is nothing but a like simpler way to write functions. Okay, like what we do, we when we write a function, we write the keyword function, then give it a name, then pass an argument, then give the curly braces, and inside that curly braces we define the function, right? But what if we just want to pass any one argument, or sometimes we do not need to pass any argument, and the function body is also only of one line, but still we'll have to like give the curly braces and that opening and closing parenthesis for the parameters. So it becomes a little confusing, or you can say complex. So that is why these arrow functions are introduced. So arrow functions helps to write JavaScript functions in less complex with minimum lines of codes. Okay, and these are anonymous function, that is you do not need to give any name or even the identifier to write these functions. Now here in the syntax you can see the normal function syntax is, first we write this keyword function, and then we write the name, and then we pass these parameters, and then we define the body of the function inside these curly braces. Okay, but in the arrow functions you see you do not have to specify the identifier, that is this function keyword. You do not have to write that. You do not have to write the function name as well. Like here you can see the name is test, right? But here there is no name. Simply the function is assigned in a variable. This is the function name. You can see I have written over here. This is a variable which stores the function. Okay, and then after the variable we'll put this equal sign, and after this equal we pass the parameters. Okay, if there is no parameters, we'll simply give this opening and closing brackets, and then give this fat arrow. This is called the fat arrow, and after this fat arrow we'll define the function body. Okay, so this is the example. You can see, suppose test is the variable, and these are the parameters, and this is a plus b is the body. Notice something here, like you did not write the curly braces, you did not write return keyword, so it saves time and complexity of the code. The function is written in only one line, but in this case you can see it will take 2 to 3 lines of code to define the function. Okay, so now let's see an example. So here you can see the first example is with one parameter and only one line of code. Here there is no use of return keyword. It automatically returns the value. Like we do not have to specify return keyword over here to return this value. Okay, so here you can see the x is the variable name, a is the argument or parameters, and we are performing this calculation and returning the value. Okay, so if we want to see the value that is returned, we'll simply call this variable, like it's a variable which has the function return value, right? What I will do is I'll simply write x, and after writing x I'll give this opening and closing brackets, and inside that bracket I'll pass the argument. Okay, so whatever it will like perform the action and return the value over here, and it will print. So that is why it is giving me 144 as the output. Okay, so second example is with multiple parameters and multiple lines of code. So if you want to write multiple lines of code, then that time you need to give this curly braces, and then you need to give a return statement as well if you want. Like if your code wants something to return, then you can use return statement over here also. But in case of single line of code, you do not have to write return. Okay, it will automatically return the value. So this is the advantage of using arrow functions. Okay, here you can see you can put empty braces if there is no parameter. Like this you can write. Okay, only opening and closing bracket will do the work. Okay, now let's move to next question. So the next question is, difference between function declaration and function expression. So the function declaration is, the syntax is like this. We write the function keyword and then the function name, then the parameters and the body. Okay, and then the function is called over here like this, test and then opening and closing bracket. But in case of function expression, you do not need to write the function name. You can say this function expressions are anonymous function. That is, it do not have any name to it. Okay, but the function is assigned to a variable. Okay, and then this variable is called. Okay, so here you can see the function call is like this. Like you need to call a variable and then assign that function call to a variable, that is answer, and then you can console this answer and see the output of this function. Okay, the next point is the function declaration has a name, that is test over here, and function expression has no name, so it is called anonymous function as well. And then next point is does not require variable assignment. So here you can see in the function expression you need to assign the function to a variable, right? But in case of declaration you do not need to assign to a variable. That is what it is saying. Needs variable assignment, and this one is do not need variable assignment. Now the next is function declarations are hoisted and function expressions are not hoisted. It's the same thing as variable hoisting, like it will be hoisted at top of the scope, okay? But in case of function expressions, these are not hoisted. Next is function declaration executes before any code, but function expression is executed when the interpreter reaches the line of code. So what happens is when we declare function, the function declarations are hoisted, right? So if the function declarations are hoisted, it is obvious that it will execute that function declaration first and then it will execute the other lines of code. But in case of function expression, as it is not hoisted, it will not execute the function expression first. It will execute the JavaScript lines of code one by one, and when the function expression comes, then it will get executed. Okay. So last point is function can be called or accessed from anywhere in the code, before or after function declaration, but function can only be accessed after the function definition. So let me show you an example, then you will get it clear. So here you can see accessing function. For function declaration, you can see over here, the function is called before the function definition. B is the function name and it is called over here. So the definition starts from here. Okay. And again, this B is called after this function definition. So both will give you the correct output. It will not cause you any error. Okay. But in case of function expression, you can see over here, if I am trying to call this A variable, it will give me error because it is not yet defined. The function definition starts from here. Okay, so that is why it gives error in this line. But here you can see after the definition of the function, it will not give error when you call this function. Okay, so this is what the last point means over here. Now let's move to next question. That is, what are closures? So closures is a very important topic. With the help of closures, the interviewer tricks you again in the pseudocode. Okay, so make sure you understand this closure thing very well. Closures, then comes promises, and there are other things also you need to know. Okay, so now what are closures? Closures are nothing. These are also functions. Okay, so closures are functions which have access to their parent scope even after they are closed. So you can see in this example, in this normal function example, you can see I am calling this test function. Okay, so what it happens is when this test function's body is executed, it first assigns this variable like this string to this name variable and then it prints the name. Okay, but it did not execute this function, like this access name function is not executed. Okay, but here you can see it is returning access name. Okay, it is returning this access name function, but it is not executing. Like this function is not called. Okay, this whole function is returned, but it is not called. So what is happening is this line of code is never executing. So now what happens is when I'm calling this test function, this test function's execution is over, but this access name function is never executed. But still you can see this test function is not over because it did not execute these line of code in this test function, right? So once this test function is over, we cannot access this function anymore. Okay, but it is still running, like it is not called, but it's still there. So you cannot access that. So this is what the first line says, that closures are functions which have access to their parent scope. Here you can see this function do not have access to its parent scope. What happens is if it does not have access to its parent scope, it cannot execute this function, right? So it says even after they are closed. But in this example, you see, this is example of closure. Okay. So in this example, I have assigned this function to a variable. Okay. And then I'm calling this variable in the next line. So what is happening is this function, this test function is not yet completed. It's stored in this result variable. So when I want to call that function, I can call it and then access this inner function. That is because this main function is returning this inner function, okay, and it is stored in this result variable. So in a way, you can say we are calling the inner function and not the parent function, okay. So this is what it means, that it has access to its parent scope even after they are closed. Okay. In this line, you can see the execution of this test function is over, but still it has some reference in this result variable. So that is why it is said that it has access to parent scope even after they are closed. Okay. Now the next point says closures helps in creating private variables as there is no direct way to create private variables. So in JavaScript, there is no direct way to create private variable. Like in other programming languages, there are like identifiers. Like in C++, if you write private, some declare some variable, so it will make that variable private. Okay, but in JavaScript, there is no such scope. Like there is no such keyword. So what we can do is we can use these closures to make a variable private. Okay. So now here you can see in this example, it is not executing this function, so it is only printing this console log statement. So it's giving me only this part, not the second console log. But in the second case, you can see it is giving both outputs, the outer scope variable also, and it is printing this one also, like the accessing outer scope variable, it is printing this also. Okay, so this is the way you can access a private variable. Like you can put any variable inside this access name function, or it can be any function name. You can put variable inside this, and if you want to access that, you need to call it like this. Okay, I've used here where keyword. You can use any other keyword also, like you can use const. In that way you can prevent reassignment of this variable as well. So this is the way you can create a private variable. Okay, now next question is, what are promises in JavaScript? What is the literal meaning of promise? Like if I am asking you to do something, you will say, yes, I am promising you I'll do this, and if I'm not able to do this, then you can do something else. Okay, so this is the literal meaning of promise. So it is same in JavaScript. JavaScript promises are simply an object. Okay, so promises are an object. It helps to deal with asynchronous code in a simpler way compared to callbacks. Okay, so now what are callbacks? Callbacks are nothing but functions which functions are passed as an argument in another functions. Okay, so what is happening is like these promises are helping to solve asynchronous code in a simpler way. Like what are asynchronous code? Suppose you want to perform an action. Suppose you want to bake a cake. Okay, so to make a cake, you will be needing some items, right? Suppose you will need flour, you will need sugar, you will need egg. So these are the tasks. Like you need to perform these tasks. Like the task to buy these items. So if these items are not brought to you, you cannot bake the cake, right? So what is this? Baking the cake, this task is dependent on another task. So these two tasks cannot run parallelly. So it is not synchronous, okay? So it is asynchronous. So what these callback functions are doing is, it's basically executing the functions that are passed in the main function. It is executing that function first, and then it will return some value, and with that value the main function will run, right? But we're not knowing that if the callback function is able to perform its tasks or not, or what is the state of the function currently. Okay, so that is where this promises helps. It is a stateful function, you can say, or it is a stateful object. This object has three states. It has pending state, it has fulfilled state, it has rejected state. Okay, and depending upon these three states, we can call different functions and execute different parts of code. Okay, so it basically helps to avoid callback hell. Like if there are too many callbacks and every callback is held somewhere and it's not being able to execute further, it's a chaos, right? So to prevent this promises comes in picture. Here you can see the pending state. What it does is, so when the promise is not yet fulfilled or rejected, like we do not know what is the state of this function, it will show as pending. Okay, and once the promise is successful, like whatever the task was, if the task was successful, then it will show the state as fulfilled. And same as rejected also, like when the function fails or the callback fails, then it will show the state as rejected. Okay, now see over here, when the state is pending, the callback function returns undefined. Okay, and when the state is fulfilled, it returns a value. Okay, like if it is the function is executed correctly, then it will return false or true or any other value. Okay, it will return some value, and when it is rejected, it will return an array object. Okay, now let's understand some terminologies to understand promises. Okay, so first one is a promise. What is a promise? It is a task like fetching the numbers or fetching the items to bake the cake. That is the promise. Okay, and what are promise value? Value is, did you fetch the numbers or not? Like did you fetch the items or not? That is the value. And what is fulfilled? It is a state. So it is yes if it's a success and no if it's a failure. Okay. Then comes success callback. So if the promise is fulfilled, then this callback function should work. Like the success callback function should work. Like if I am able to fetch the items, then I can bake the cake, right? So bake the cake, this callback function will work only if the promise is fulfilled. Okay, and same with this failure callback as well. Like if it is failed, then I should not bake the cake, right? If it shows some error, so then this callback function should work. Now let me show you how to create and use a promise. So the first step is to create and promise object. Okay, so here you can see the first step is creating object. So how do you create an object? You use the new keyword to create an object. So here you can see I've specified this variable as constant, and then I've used this new keyword, and then I've called the constructor function over here. So promise this one, this is the constructor function in this JavaScript. Okay, so with the help of this constructor you can create a object. Now the next step is use promise constructor to pass a function which will handle the state, that is resolve or reject. Okay, so here you can see resolve and reject both functions. Okay, but in this promise constructor you need to pass a function. Okay, so it accepts a function as an argument. So I'm passing here an arrow function. Okay, so here you can see I've passed here no arguments and given this fat arrow and then the body. So this is just a prototype to show you how to write the arrow function over here. In the next line you can see I've passed the function. So these are the two arguments inside the function, that is the resolve and reject, and then comes the body. and both this resolve and reject are functions. Okay, what are we doing is we're passing a function inside the constructor function. Okay, here you can see for fulfilling or rejecting promise, we need promise constructor and need to pass a callback function to it as an argument. So this is the callback function. Okay, I'm passing this callback function inside this promise constructor function. Okay. Now, when to use this resolve function and when to use this reject function. Here you can see the state changes from pending to fulfilled. Then the resolve function is called. And when state changes from pending to reject, then the reject function is called. Okay. Now, after passing the callback functions in the promise constructor, we need to declare or define the callback functions, right? So here you can see the third step is create callback functions and execute them based on the status. Okay. So now let me go to the example to show you. This is the step 3. You can see based on status change, execute callback function. So what are the callback functions here? I've created these two functions. First one is on success and the second one is on reject. So for on success, I'm just printing the console as success message. You can write inside this body any code you want, like whatever code you want to run when the promise is fulfilled. And in the reject function, you can see I just printed this rejected message. Okay, so these are the two callback functions. And now callback functions are generally passed as an argument to another function. Okay. Now, according to the state change, we need to call these functions, right? So what we will do is this promise object. Okay, this promise object has two methods. First is the then and second is catch. It is almost similar to the try catch block that you use in other programming languages. It is similar to that only. Like when there is no error, you need to execute the try block, right? And if you face any exception or error, then the catch block of the code is executed. It is similar to that only. This then function or this then method is executed when the promise is fulfilled. Okay, so we'll have to pass or call this function, this success on success function inside this then method, and we need to pass this on reject function inside this catch method if the promise is failed. Okay. Also note here, if status is fulfilled, the function passed in then gets executed, and if the status is rejected, function passed in catch is executed. This is what I told you just now. You can see in this example also the syntax how it is done. Like this is the promise object, and then we are writing this then function, and then inside this then function we are passing the callback function here. Okay. And it is same for catch as well. And here you can see, also remember the parameters passed in resolve function is accepted in then method. Like I told you over here now, like these two are functions, right? So these functions have a definition. Okay, it is not defined here. Like it is an inbuilt function, so it is already defined. So in that definition, if there are any arguments that is accepted in resolve function, that argument will be accepted in then function. Like this method, then method will accept that parameter. Okay, and if anything is passed in this reject function, then that parameters will be passed on or accepted in this catch method. Okay, so this was all about promise in JavaScript. Now let's move to next question. So the next question is, what is strict mode in JavaScript and how can it be enabled? Strict mode is a way in which any silent errors are eliminated. Like suppose I am trying to assign a value to a variable which is not declared. Okay, so what it happens is you can see in this first example, I have assigned 2 to this variable a. Okay, and it is not giving me any error. But in the second case, you can see when I'm trying to assign 2 to this a variable, it is showing error. It is showing reference error. That is, a is not defined. Okay. So this is what it means by silent errors. Like in the first case, it is not showing that you did not declare the variable a. But in second case, if you use this use strict keyword, it will show error if you do not declare variable. Okay. So that is the next point. That is, suppose you used a variable which is not declared, then it will show error. Okay, and how to enable this strict mode? That is by using the keywords use strict. Okay, this is the syntax you can see over here. If you declare this use strict keyword at the beginning of the program, like at the beginning of the file, then it will execute the program in a strict mode. Okay, you can add use strict at the beginning of the file, program or function. Okay, you can add this use strict keyword anywhere in the program. Okay, like it can be in the file, or it can be in a program, or it can be in a function scope as well. Okay, now let's move on to next question. So the next question is how to empty an array in JavaScript. So there are multiple ways in which you can empty an array. So these are the few ways I have listed over here. So the first one is assigning again with empty brackets. Like what it will happen is, if you're declaring an array with its value assigned, and again you reassign that array with empty braces, then it will basically create a new array. Okay, like the original array will not be changed, but it will create a new array over here. Okay, which will be empty. So it is not really a good way to empty an array, but it will work in some cases. Okay. Second method is setting array length to 0. Like if we write arr.length equals to 0, it will delete all the array elements and it will empty the array. Okay. The next one is by using the splice method. Okay, that is arr.splice, and this splice accepts two arguments. Okay, the first one is the array index and then the array length. It can accept many other items as well, like you can see the syntax over here. First one is the index, second is how many, or you can say how many elements you want to delete. Okay, and then the items, like you can specify a specific item which you want to delete. Okay, so this is the method you can use to delete the array elements from the array and empty the array. Okay, and the last method is using pop method. This is very tedious method, like it will pop out one by one and empty the array. So this is nothing but this while loop will run till the array length. So I'm giving this condition over here, till the array length is 0, this while loop will run and it will keep on popping out elements one by one. Okay, so these were the methods you can use to empty an array. Now next question is, what are event loops? So knowing the concepts of event loops is also very important. Like many interviewers again trick you in the coding part and wants to check if you know the loops and the execution of the codes correct in a correct way or not. Okay, so you should be very clear about this event loops. So what are event loops? Event loops are basically programming structure, or you can say it is a type of program which helps, or it basically gets triggered when the program gets executed. Okay, so here you can see it is a programming structure which handles the execution of code, collecting and processing events, and executing queued subtasks. Okay, so here you can see this is the diagrammatic representation. So this is the event queue. What happens is, whatever the code you have, like whatever functions or any events you have in the code, it will come to this event queue and it will execute one by one. Okay, but it is the event loop which decides that which event should be executed first and which event should be executed afterwards. Okay, so let's take this example and see. So here you can see I have created three functions. First one is named as 1, second is 2, and the third one is 3. And I've called this in order only, like the first one I've called and then the second one and then the third one. Okay. And inside these functions, I've written only one statement which will print the message saying 1, 2 or 3, like whichever function it is executing, it should print that message. Okay, so here you can see first it will print 1. So this is the output, it will print 1, then it will print 2. So this is the part it will print, it is printing 2, and then it is printing 3, and then you can see it is printing this part executed after 3 seconds. So then it is executing this set timeout function inside this function 2. It is executing this console log statement. It is not executing at the time of execution of this function. It is executing after 3 seconds. Okay. That is because I've mentioned a delay over here, that is 3000. So it will wait for 3 seconds and then execute this set timeout function. So you can see over here, it is not executing in the order of the code, like with which order I have written this code, it is not executing in that manner. It is executing in a logical manner. Okay, so this is what this event loop is responsible for. The execution of code, the collecting and processing events. This event queue is collecting the processes and events in this event queue, right? So this is what this event loop is doing. And then it is executing queued subtasks. Like this queue will have many subtasks. Event loops will tell which subtask to run when. Okay. And the next point is it basically pulls out stuffs from queue and places it in function execution stack when required. So this is the function execution stack. So it will basically pull out these functions or events from this queue, and then it will place it in this stack, and then it will get executed. So unless this is pulled out and placed in the stack, the events or function will not get executed. Okay, so this is the responsible of this event loops. Now the next question is, what is event bubbling? Event bubbling and event capturing goes hand in hand. Okay, so I'll explain it to you side by side. So this you can see, this question is regarding event bubbling and this is regarding event capturing. Okay, so what happens is, this event bubbling is a type of method of event propagation in HTML DOM when one or more elements are nested inside of another element. Okay, so suppose I have these 3 div elements in the HTML file. Okay, and if I click on this child div, what it should do is it should bubble up. Like event bubbling means it should execute from this child to this parent. Okay, and in case of event capturing, or this is also known as trickling, when I click on child, it should execute from grandparent to child. It is basically going downwards. Okay, these are the two differences you can say between the event bubbling and event capturing. So now let's read these points. Event bubbling occurs in upward direction, that is from child element to parent element, and in case of event capturing, it occurs in downward direction, that is from outermost element to innermost element. Okay, now let's see an example to understand it better. So this is the example of event bubbling. So in this HTML file you can see, let me zoom it a bit. So here you can see I've created these 3 div elements. Okay, so the first one is this parent element, that is grandparent, and the second is the parent, and then comes this child. Okay, and in this JavaScript file you can see I've accessed the ID of these div elements with the help of query selector and added an event listener to it. Like what is event listener? Like whenever I am clicking on the div element, like this is the div element, you can see this is the output. Okay, so when I'm clicking on this child element, there is an event occurring. So what event is occurring here? The click event is occurring. So what is this add event listener accepts is, first argument is the click and second is the callback function. Okay, what this callback function does is it basically bubbles up. Like if we click on child, it will get clicked on parent as well as it will get clicked on grandparent. Okay, so that is why you can see the order over here. This is the output. When I'm clicking on child, first the div element child is working, and then the other two elements are automatically clicked. Like I did not click it manually. I just clicked on child and the other two elements got clicked. But the order is from down to up. Okay, like it got, like you can see, first the child is printed, then the parent is printed, and then the grandparent is printed. Okay, now the coding is same for both the event capturing as well as event bubbling, but only difference is in this add event listener. You can see over here in the callback function I have specified another argument, that is false. If this is false, then the event will bubble, but if it is true, then the event will capture or it will trickle down. Okay, let me show you the code for event capturing, then it will be clear to you. Here you can see these are true value. Okay, that is why you can see when I'm clicking on child over here, first it is executing grandparent, then it is using parent, then it is executing child. So it is from top to bottom. Okay, so now let's move on to next question. So the next question is, how do you add an element at the beginning and end of an array? So here you can see, this is the given array, and now if we want to add elements in this array, we have two methods. Like for adding elements at the end, we can use this push method, like arr, that is the array dot push, and then we can insert this element at the end. And to insert an element at the starting of the array, we can use this unshift method. Okay, but in ES6 the syntax is more easy. Like here you can see, I can simply write the element at the beginning of the array, and then I can give comma and then three dots, and then I can give the initial array name. So it will basically add the element at the starting. And to add the element at the end, I'll just have to write it over here. Like I'll have to first give three dots and then the array name and then the last element over here. Okay. Also we can do it all together. Like I can add element like this in the first and then the array name with these three dots and then the last element. Okay, so it will give the same output. You can see over here. This is the output using normal JavaScript. This is the array it printed after adding the elements, and this is in ES6. Like first I'll add the element at the start, then at the end, and also I can add both of them together in the single line itself. Okay, so these are the methods we can use to add elements at beginning and end of an array. So now next question is, what will be the output of this code? Okay, so this is a very easy and simple code, nothing to worry about. Like if you know how the where keyword works, you will be able to answer this question very easily. So pause the video and take out the answer and then come back and see what is the solution of this. Okay, so now here you can see the first line is, it is declaring this num variable with where keyword and assigning 15 value to it. Okay, the real thing comes from here. Like first I'll call this outer function. So it will go to this line of code, that is the function definition. And inside this function definition, the num variable is again declared and again assigned a new value. Okay. So after assigning the value, it will again come to this line of code. It will not execute this part. First it will come to this line and it will call this inner function. After this is called, then it will go to this num variable. Here you can see the num is incremented. So the value was previously 10. After incrementing, the num becomes 11. But next you can see over here, the variable num is again declared and it is assigned a value 5. So whatever the value was previously stored in num variable, it will get lost and new variable will be assigned. So in this line of code, like the console.log, this line will print the num value as 5. Okay. So this is the easiest pseudocode you can say. So if you know how this where keyword works, you will be able to answer this question. Okay. So here you can see this is the output, that is num equals to 5, and this is the explanation over here. It is the same thing that I explained in the previous slide, but see over here. Note, if you print out num outside of the outer function, the num will still be 15, as the variable declared inside inner function will be destroyed once function ends. Here you can see this is the same code. I have just copy pasted it over here. You can see over here, if I print this num variable outside the scope, that like outside this outer function, okay, so that is over here, it will print 15. That is because these variables, this num variable is function scoped. It will get destroyed once this function execution is over. Okay, so in that case, only this global variable will be intact. Okay, that is why you will get the num value as 15. Okay, now let's go to the next question. Now here it's asking what is the output of this. Here you can see the output is a string. And why is it string? You can see over here the typeof returns the type of the variable, that is the data type of this variable. So if we execute this first, like type of 1, so what is the type of 1? The type of 1 is a number. Okay. Now if I replace this type of 1 with number, if I write what is the type of number, so you can see type of number is a string. Okay. That is why when I write type of 1, then it will return string as an output. Okay, you can see over here I have printed it separately to make you understand this. So type of 1 is a number and type of number is a string. That is why we are getting type of 1 is string. Okay, now next question. What will be the output of this? What is this? This denotes an array, and this is also an array. So an empty array, when concatenated with another empty array, it gives an empty string. Okay. So here you can see the output is blank, like it is printing nothing. You can see this is the line where the code execution started, and this is the line where the code execution stopped. But in between them, there is nothing printed. But actually there is this empty string printed, but we cannot see it. Okay, you can see that if you console the type of function over here, you can see this is a string. Okay, so it is an empty string that is being printed. So let's read the explanation first. It says empty array concatenated with another empty array gives empty string. That is what I just said just now. First empty array, this will be converted to string. Okay, so this first array, this will be converted to string, and same with second array. So this array will also be converted to string. And when a string is concatenated with another string, it gives a string. That is why it is giving us empty string. You can see the output is empty. Nothing is printed, but there is actually an empty string. You can find that by doing console log this. Okay, I think you understood why it is giving an empty string. And suppose it gave you over here, instead of empty array, it can give you empty object also. Okay, and suppose you do not know the answer of that, you can simply say something like, first I will convert empty object to string, and then I'll concatenate it with another object or array, whatever it is. I'll convert that also to string, and then I'll concat those two strings together. Okay, so you can basically explain the logic to the interviewer. Okay, that will also be accepted. Now moving to next question. So what will be the output of this code, and how can you make variable declared with var keyword block scoped? Okay, So now here you can see this is a function, and inside this function there is a block. Okay, and inside this block there are two variables declared, with one with let keyword and another with var keyword. So if you remember, I told you that when variable is declared with let keyword, the scope of that variable is block scope. Okay, but the variable declared with var keyword, it has a function scope. Okay, so now here you can see when I'm trying to console log v, it is giving me this output. You can see over here it is giving me 10 as the output. But here, when I'm trying to console log the value of L, it is giving me an error. And what is the error? It is a reference error. It is saying L is not defined. That is because this variable L has only block scope. That is, once execution of this block is over, the variable will be destroyed. So I cannot access this variable over here in this function. But once this execution block is over, var keyword is still intact. It is not destroyed because it has a function scope. So I can access this v variable but not L. That is why we are getting this L as not defined. Okay. Now next question is, how can you make variable declared with var keyword block scoped? So here the variable v is a function scope. So you can make this v as a block scoped as well. But how to do it? That is the question. So let's go to the next slide to see how you can do that. Here is the explanation. Let is block scoped and var is function scope. So variable v can be accessed outside the block, but variable L cannot be accessed outside the block. Hence it shows error. Okay. Now how to make a variable declared with var keyword blocked scope? You can use function expression to make a variable blocked scoped. Okay, let me show you how. So here you can see this is the main function, that is the func, this is the function name. Inside this function I have declared a block, like I've made a block, and inside this block I have made a function expression. This is a self-invoking function expression, like once this is declared, immediately it is invoked. Okay, so that is the syntax of this. Like you can see over here, this is the function definition, and as soon as the function is defined, the function is called here only with this opening and closing braces. Okay, so this is called IIFE, that is immediately invoked function expression. Okay, so if we write this v variable inside this function expression, it can't be accessed outside this block, so it will become a blocked scoped. Okay, so here you can see I'm trying to print variable v. You can see over here it is saying v is not defined. Okay, so this is how you make a variable declared with var keyword a blocked scoped. Okay, now moving to the next question. What will be the output of this code? So the first code you can see 5 is less than 6, which is true. Again it is less than 7 also, it is true. So it will return true value, right? But in the second case you can see 7 is greater than 6, that is also true, and 6 is greater than 5, that is also true. So it should give me true, right? But it is giving me false. Why is that? That is because you can see the explanation over here. Here you can see 5 less than 6 will give true. Okay, and true less than 7, what this operator will do is it will convert this true to 1. Okay, it will convert it to 1 and then it will compare. Like if 1 is less than 7, then it will give as true. Okay, which is happening in the first case. And then again you see over here, it will see if 7 is greater than 6. Like in this case, second case, 7 is greater than 6 is true, then it will return 1, and then it will compare with 1 greater than 5, which is false, right? 1 is not greater than 5. That is why it is giving you false over here. Okay. So next, how many times or for how long hello will be printed? So you can see this code over here. So here you can see Here it is asking how many times this hello word will be printed, or for how long it will be printed. So you can see the output over here. The hello is printed infinite times until I stopped the execution. Okay, it was going on printing. Okay, but in this code you see what this code says, like it should stop after 2 seconds, right? But it does not happen like that. Let me explain it to you line by line. Here you can see I have declared a variable with let keyword and I've assigned it a true value. And then what happens is it is not going to execute this set timeout function. Like it will wait for 2 seconds and then it will try to execute this function. But before that, it will go to this line of code, that is while loop. And while loop A is true, right? So the condition satisfies. That is why it goes to this line of code and keeps on printing hello. And it is going in an infinite loop. That is because this A variable is never assigned false. This A variable is assigned false in this timeout function, right? It is not going to execute this function anytime. Like it will wait to get executed in a separate thread, but it will not get executed in the main thread. That is because the main thread is busy printing hello. Okay, so once this loop gets freed, then only it will be able to execute this statement, right? But it will never get freed. So it will go into an infinite loop. So now let's see the explanation. The timeout will not get executed as the execution main thread is busy executing the while loop. Okay. Hence, A will never become false and will never exit the while loop. The timeout will keep on waiting in the queue and not be executed. Hence, it will print hello infinite times until I stop the execution manually. Okay, so I hope you understood this code. Now moving on to the next question. It is linked with the previous question only. You can see over here, the code is almost same. Let me explain it to you. So the question is, what will happen after 2 seconds? What should you do to free the cursor after executing the code? Okay, so let me zoom this and show you. So here you can see in this code, there is a set timeout function and there is an set interval function. So what it will do is, in the previous example, I was showing you that it was printing hello, but in this, I'm showing you that it is printing 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. Okay, so here you can see what it will do. First, it will assign a true value, then it will come to set interval function. Okay, after 2 milliseconds, this set interval function will work. And after 2 seconds, this set timeout function will work. Okay, so that is why it comes to this line of code first and not to this line of code. Okay, here you can see A is true. So when line of code comes to this function, the value of A is still true. Okay, so it will execute this if block. It will increment I. I've declared I and assigned it a 0 value. So it will keep on incrementing till 2 milliseconds. Okay, so that is why you can see the program printed numbers till 8 and then it is not printing anything. Okay, and after 2 seconds, this set timeout function will be executed and then this A will be false. Okay, but here you can see the cursor is still not free. Okay, even after the set timeout is working, like it is executed, and this A should become 0, like it should become false, still it is not exiting the loop. That is why the second question comes over here. What should you do to free the cursor after executing the code? Okay, first let us see the explanation over here. It will print till 8 and then stop, but the cursor is not free. This is what I just now explained. And then you can see over here, set timeout function made the value of A false, but set interval function is still running. So notice one thing here, I have set this value of A to false, but not this function, right? So the function will be executed after 2 milliseconds, but this if block will not be executed. Okay, so that is why this cursor is not free. Okay, so this is what this second point is saying, that set interval function is not executing if statement as it is false, but set interval function keeps running. Okay, hence the cursor is not free. Now to free the cursor, let's see what we can do. So what will be the motive of the code? The motive of the code will be to stop this set interval function, right? What we are doing here is we are assigning this function to a variable. That is, I am assigning this function to id variable. Okay, and instead of clearing this a value, like assigning the value a false, we will clear the interval itself. So in set timeout function, we are using clear interval function to clear the id. Okay, so what it will do is it will stop the execution after 2 seconds. So you can see over here, after it printed till 8, the cursor is free. I did not free the cursor manually, it stopped automatically. Okay, so here you can see we need to stop the set interval function. This is the motive. So assign an ID to it and pass that ID in clear interval function. So this is what we are doing inside this set timeout function. Code will exit after execution and cursor will be free. This is the method in which you can free the cursor. Okay, I hope this was clear to you. Now next, moving to the next question and the last question. So here, what is the output of this code? This is also very simple. This code is just to check if you know the template string, like how to use template in JavaScript. Okay. Here you can see in this line of code, we're calling the function. So this is the function definition. Inside the function definition, there is a return and it will return hey as the value. Okay. So what we are doing here is, this is the function calling, and this part, this hello, is actually passing parameter to the function. We write in this single quote, like this is not the single quote, it is basically the apostrophe sign. Inside this apostrophe sign, we are passing the parameters. Okay, it is similar to writing as function and then opening and closing bracket, and inside that if we write anything, so that is passed as a parameter, right? So instead of using this opening and closing bracket, we can use this symbol to pass parameters. So this is called the template. Okay, template string. So here you can see the explanation. What it will do is, function hello means passing hello as a parameter to the function, this function. Okay, this is a type of template we use to pass parameters. Okay, so this is a type of template, but still the function will print hey. That is because the return statement gives hey as the value. Okay, so here you can see it does not affect whatever we are passing here. It will still give the output as hey. It is basically to check if you know this line of code, like if you know this syntax. It's just to check that. It's a pretty simple code. Okay. So these were the 30 questions that I discussed in this video. I'll be uploading more 5 videos with 30 questions each, total of 150 questions. So I hope these interview questions will help you, and let me know if you're facing any difficulty or have any doubt. You can contact me through my social media handles, or you can comment in the comment section as well. Also, if you like my video, don't forget to subscribe my channel and also click the notification bell so that whenever I upload video, you get an instant notification in your mobile. Okay, so I'll be back with another video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.